that back to me.
All right. And all right, Jeff Paul, I transitioned it back to you. Okay. So really quickly, it is a Monday at 3 p.m. Or 2 p.m. if you're all the way on the western part of our state. Welcome. Thank you so much for being able to join us either now or if you're going to be watching this later this week. But if you would have asked me before this conversation, what does user acceptance testing mean? I would have been like, I have no idea. So little known fact, before we go live with any web app, we want to make sure it actually does what it's supposed to do. So and we want to make sure we have a diverse number of people in different roles to be able to test this out. And super excited to be partnering with RHEL Central, Marzano Research, and Basis to be able to provide not only this platform, but this quick opportunity to make sure we get all the kinks worked out so that when the platform is live and you're testing it out in real time, you're, determining what the level you should be rating yourself versus why this, image or word is looking funky on your screen, right? So I'm super excited to kick it back to Jeff and the team, and just want to quickly say this is a collaborative process, and I want to thank all of you for being on the screen, all of you who will be joining later, and being able to just roll with the punches while we go through this process, because we want to make a tool that is super beneficial for all of you across our state. So take it away, Jeff.
Fantastic. Okay, and thank you guys. And I've got a few members. You'll see one member in particular, Rohit Vangor. He's on the screen right there. Hi, Ro. He and I will pass the screen back and forth a couple of times once we jump into actual working software. And I've got a couple other folks with me. It actually took a big team to pull this together. The software that we are going to show you, we only brought a very small number of them, but we've got Anush, we've got Divya, I think Dana's floating around. I can't see everybody on my screen all at the same time. And then there's a whole group of folks behind us who really were the impetus behind building what you guys are about to see. So that said, let me just kind of give us the ground rules of the UAT process. And I'm not in presenter view because I'm gonna exit PowerPoint very quickly, and we're actually gonna jump into a view of the software itself. But we've asked you guys to come together for user acceptance testing. Shirley, you did a fantastic job of explaining why this is so important. It should be short in duration, and so you can see here it's kicking off right now. And so thank you for being here live or watching the video at your convenience. After this live session, we're going to end it this Friday, 5 p.m. Central Time. And what end it means is what user acceptance testing is in our case is we set up a very specific environment. It's a web app that is only accessible to you guys. You have to know the URL. You have to have the right user credentials to get into it. And you will find this Friday at 5 p.m. Central Time, you won't be able to access it anymore. And that just allows us to kind of control who's accessing it and the experience, and making sure that we get timely feedback. We are going to ask that you provide feedback via email. You can package it all up. You can send it, during this hour that we're spending together. You can, send it over tomorrow. You can send multiple emails. We are going to ask you to send it to userfeedback@hourglassets.com. And just to kind of the lay of the land here. So we're all operating under this RHEL Central umbrella. And as Shirley mentioned, you've got folks from Marzano, you've got folks from Basis, and we come along as a package deal, but we're actually a company called Hourglass, and we're a software development company, and we built the software you're about to see. So we'll collect all that feedback. We'll make sure that it gets out to the rest of the group. Folks like Shirley will react to that feedback. Here's the most important thing that I want to say about user feedback. Not only are we looking for things like, like that image looks weird. You are going to see images that look weird. It's going to happen. That's how software is. It's an iterative process. We've built the best version of it's a beta version. This means it's the first time that real people other than the software development team actually get to see the app and put the app through its paces. And here's what I guarantee you, because it happens every time we roll out a new software app, you guys are going to do things that are different from what we do. And so Ro, for example, when he's testing, he says, okay, I'm going to click, this button, then this button, and then this button, and then the software does exactly what we would expect it to do. You guys, we're going to just throw you out there to the wolves, so to speak. You guys, we're going to give you some hand holding in this structured version, but eventually you're going to get in there and you're going to click the buttons in the opposite order, and the app's going to break. And then we're going to want you to write us and say, hey, I just tried it. I thought, like, what the heck? Like, why not, push cancel before submit? And it didn't do what I expected it to do. And we go, yeah, that's why we let real users in and we conduct user acceptance testing before the whole state of Nebraska has access to this new app. So that's really the point of it. It's really beneficial for real folks like yourselves to get in and put it through its paces and do things like real users are going to do out in the field. That's really what's critical about UAT. And then the feedback really allows us to be responsive to the feedback that you provide, because we build software using an agile process. And what that means is you may give us a piece of feedback that we react to an hour from now, and then everybody else's experience is better as a result of the feedback that you gave us. Maybe it takes us a day, but a day from now, everybody's experience is better. Maybe it takes us 2 weeks to make a change, but 2 weeks from now, everybody's experience is better. So that's really the importance of the feedback, and we're very responsive and able to push out new software very quickly. So that's the kind of how we operate and why it's really important. And then I do want to make a distinction between UAT feedback and then technical support. If you can't log in and imagine, any of the web apps that you use across your daily lives, if you can't get into the app, very typically it says, call tech support. That's what we want you to do. That's a little bit different from UAT feedback, because we've prevented you from being able to actually get into the experience and give us that UAT feedback. You can call us, you can text us, you can do it for fun, you can do it if you run into trouble. You can also email us, support@hourglassets.com. And that's for stuff like the app is just not working for me, so you're prohibiting me from actually getting in and doing testing. Versus I'm in there, I'm testing, I'm seeing stuff, I'm entering data, and I have some feedback about that experience and how you might be able to make it better for users. Let me know at the end. We'll do a quick Q&A, but if for whatever reason you want to kind of vet, which contact should I go with, you could also just hit both email addresses if you want, and we'll kind of sort it out on our end. But those are the ground rules of the when and what we're going to ask you to do. And then we did put together to try to make this an experience that is meaningful. You may not have any association to these two particular school districts that we chose, but for better or worse, we chose two school districts, Ainsworth Community Schools and Arcadia Public Schools. And we chose some number of the schools that are associated. Do we have anybody from either of these school districts here? That would just be pure happenstance if we did. No, I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, that's all right. For the purposes of UAT, we created a demo environment, and it allows you to interact with demo users who are associated either to Ainsworth Community Schools or Arcadia Public Schools. We're going to talk a little bit about, kind of different user roles and the hierarchy that exists, but ultimately we're talking about the comprehensive needs assessment, and it's a tool that was developed to help campus level teams rate themselves, and then of course the really important part here is improve based on that self-assessment of the campus. And there are levels of folks who are going to help out in that process that we'll talk about in a second, but that's at least the, in terms of the demo environment. We didn't want to give you the entirety of the state of Nebraska. This should be a pretty good approximation of what might it be like if I'm attached to Ainsworth Elementary School, I'm a campus level team at Ainsworth, and I rate myself using this tool. So that's what you're going to see in the demo environment. I'm going to close out of PowerPoint here, and I want to show you, oh, you know what? I was actually going to ask you to do, it's going to get really chaotic in the chat window, and I promise you it's going to be okay. For each of you, if you would just add your email address in the chat window, we're going to pull all of those email addresses, and what I'm about to show you will email to that entire group. We're going to email it from that UAT feedback@hourglassets.com email address. So it's just real easy for you to hit reply. And then that's how you can send back your UAT feedback. And then you'll get a PDF. I'll show you what that PDF looks like here in a second. So let me stop sharing this screen and share this screen. Okay. So you should now be seeing a different document. It's Campus Assessment User Acceptance Testing Overview, has the NDE logo at the top. You'll get this via email at the end of this session. I just want to very quickly walk through it. So here's the same information about the when, same information about contacting support, same information about giving UAT feedback. So you didn't have to memorize what I showed you here. You could just get it from this document. And then here's really where we get to the nuts and bolts of the demo UAT experience that we're asking you to participate in. There's really two critical roles that we have imagined, and I should say we've imagined because all of this is based on, we haven't given it to you guys and you haven't given us feedback yet, and maybe we've imagined it incorrectly and maybe we need to reimagine things. But we do imagine that there's a campus assessment manager and a campus team member. And the really critical distinction is the campus assessment manager is somebody who's associated to a campus, and they're really responsible for inviting the rest of the campus team. And we make it really open-ended that way on purpose, because we didn't want to pigeonhole our way into, it's got to be the principal, and then the principal only ever invites the assistant principal or the deans or the, you know, whomever. It's literally anybody at a campus, and for the purpose of this demo experience, we've created users and they already have defined roles. But there's campus assessment managers, and they really are responsible for saying, who's my team who's going to participate in this rating process with this tool? And then there are campus team members, and they can participate in the ratings process. And that's really the only distinction. Just, do I invite people to participate, or am I a participant in the process? You can have as many campus assessment managers as you want. If you want more cooks in the kitchen, you can have as many campus team members as you want. You do need to have at least one campus assessment manager per campus in order to kind of, you know, like the chicken and the egg of the process, to either be the chicken or the egg and kick off the process at a school. And you'll see that's what we're going to ask you to test, is those two experiences. There's also, and this is also, we've imagined a hierarchy, and we really want to make sure that this is responsive to ultimately a campus and their needs. But we of course know that a school is nested within a district. And so we may have some district administrators out there who want to participate. And mind you, all of this is testing before this really goes live. So we want to mimic what that live experience is, and we want to mimic the experience that a school may have support at the district level, and that means the district level needs to have some insight into what's happening in this tool. We know that districts are nested within ESUs, and so you may have some support at an ESU, and they need to have some visibility into what's happening with this tool. And then ultimately, you guys are in fantastic hands, because you also have support at the state level, and so there may be some NDE users who have some visibility into this tool, and then you have this beautiful collaborative ecosystem. And that's really what we're trying to test today, but we're starting with the most granular unit, which is, let's at least start at let's look at 2 districts and their campuses, again, demo environment, and then we'll kind of build up from there. This is where, and as soon as I show this to you, I guarantee you that at least somebody here is going to go to this URL and is going to pick a user and is going to put in this password. We're going to walk you through it, so you don't have to do that right this minute, but that's what we're going to ask you to do for the next week after this session. But if you want to just, you know, be a self-starter and jump right in, you can. That's where you would go. So this is the link to, again, this UAT environment. The password's the same for all of these users. And then you can see we have a few different flavors of users to help you kind of put the app through its paces and see different levels of information. But we've got an ESU admin. We've got a district admin. Sorry if I'm scrolling too quickly for you guys, but again, you'll get this document. We have campus managers, and then we have campus team members. And then we also have, just to kind of give you the full experience, we have registered users who have not been added to a school's campus assessment team. And so this is our attempt to give you, and here's where things get absolutely crazy, and it's okay. This is like the zaniness of UAT. If somebody is the first to invite a registered user, you guys are all in the same environment, and I threw out all of the user roles. Eventually somebody will add these folks, and then they will just be campus team members. So congratulations to the first person who makes it through that process and registers them, or adds them to a campus assessment team. But just know things will change, and that's okay. And some of that is to actually simulate the experience of, you're going to be collaborating with a bunch of different folks, be they at your school, or be they at the district, or be they at the ESU level, or be they at NDE. And that's kind of okay, where only a campus assessment team is actually responsible for performing the rating process. I think that's a really critical distinction. So I'm going to stop sharing this document now. You'll get it via email. I do want to pause there. Is there anybody who has a burning question at this point before we actually jump into the software? I want to make sure I entertain burning questions. I'm looking, I don't see hands.
I do have a quick clarifying question.
Please.
Just
There
to
we
be
go.
certain, I heard there are only going to be 2 schools populated into this demo, but when it goes live, every single school would be a part of this, correct?
Great. I'm really glad that you asked that. Let me go back to the PowerPoint and share that with you guys. And then I will answer that question. Great clarifying question. Thank you. So there are 2 districts, depending on who you sign in as, and this is kind of the, if you look in that UAT PDF that we'll share, you kind of want to, like bounce back and forth and make sure, yep, I'm logged in as a campus manager for Ainsworth Elementary School, and I only see Ainsworth Elementary School. There's a campus manager for Ainsworth High School. You're only going to see Ainsworth High School. Same thing so there's actually 4 schools that are associated to Ainsworth Community Schools. Again, that's not saying Ainsworth Community Schools actually only has 4 schools. I don't know. That would be a great trivia if somebody out here knew how many schools. I don't offhand, probably more than 4. Arcadia Public Schools, for the purposes of this demo, has 2 schools. And again, a user is assigned only to Arcadia Elementary, a user is assigned only to Arcadia High School. Then you have users who are assigned to both schools, so a district level user. And then we do have that very first user on that guide you'll get is an ESU level user. And then the fun thing about an ESU level user for the purposes of our demo, again, this is the fun of developing software where you just kind of anything goes. Our Ainsworth and Arcadia may be part of the ESU, the same ESU. I don't know if that's actually true. Again, fun Nebraska trivia. But for the purposes of this demo, they are both nested under the same ESU. And so if you're from that ESU and they're like bitter ESU rivals, I don't know how that would work. I watched a lot of football this weekend. I doubt there's bitter rivalries between ESUs, but again, for demo purposes, they're both under the same ESU. If you log in as that ESU level user, you'll be able to see all of the schools underneath, and we'll actually show you what that looks like, because for the purposes of the rest of this session, we're going to walk you through looking at the actual web app using that ESU level user. And the benefit there is we can kind of just jump between campuses and show you the full, kind of quote unquote, the full app experience. But that was a great question. I want to give one more pause here. Any other burning questions before we actually jump into the web app? No? Okay, excellent. All right, so let me go ahead and stop sharing. And this is where we are going to do kind of a MC dance between Ro and me. So Ro, I'm going to give you the screen.
Thank you, Jeff.
Give me a second.
Yeah, I gotta enable that.
All right. So, okay. Yep, I'm making you the host. I may regret it, but we all may regret it.
Okay, here we go. All righty. So I think everyone can see my screen. And as Jeff said, my name is Rohith Vangor, or you can call me Ro for just an easy name. I know it's hard to pronounce, but today we're going to go through the campus assessment app. As Jeff said, I'm going to hide this guy. We are using Nick today, who is our ESU admin. And as Jeff said, he is associated with both of the respective districts that we have imported into our UAT experience. So as you can see, this is an empty draft box. This is an empty page currently. But if you go here on this entity blue bar, this blue bar here drives pretty much everything on these pages. So all the data you're seeing here, as you see, we actually have no data here, is being driven by the selection here. So currently we only have one assessment, being the CNAs. And obviously in the future, if we have more, we're going to add more here. And then from our entity selector, you can see we have both districts available. So as an ESU admin, Nick can go between these schools and see all of the data that is related to each one of these districts. So right now we are at Arcadia Public Schools at the district level, but if we go down to Ainsworth Elementary School, you can also see we have added nothing currently to this. But if we switch to Little Pause, you can see we did add some demo data here, just one assessment that will show on the assessment results summary table. So from there, we're going to talk about this table a little bit.
And
So
we're gonna kind of talk over each other a little bit, and I hope you guys think that is okay and it adds value to the experience. There's a really interesting, so this is like the suspension of disbelief to make it a more robust UAT experience for you. We went ahead and actually scored, again, demo data. This is not real data. These ratings don't actually reflect anything about these campuses that we selected at random. But for the purposes of this demo, we went in and scored them. So again, it does not actually reflect these campuses' performance or the campus team's perceived performance because it's fake people, fake data. But we did want to at least score something so you could see, well, what happens when you score an assessment and you actually have real CNA data available? And that was the difference between when Rose showed you Ainsworth Community School, I think it was, where there was no data and you could see this widget was grayed out, this experience. So this is actually, when this goes live, there will be no data. And when I say go live, this means real people are participating in the real use of this web app and they're really scoring the CNA. They're going to have, like a tabula rasa kind of moment where they walk in, blank slate, and they say, I don't see anything. And the beauty of the tool is, great, we give you the tools you need to be able to score yourself. And then that's when you really get the true value of the experience. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go back and forth. And as you conduct UAT, you will see some data, again, demo data. You'll see no data. And then we're actually going to walk you through momentarily, how do you actually go about scoring a CNA? And then that's when you're going to start seeing data show up. So just as long as you kind of are aware that there's kind of that moment where we're going to give you a blank slate and you're going to see nothing, and that's the real experience, and that's okay. But we would love to get feedback about if there's anything we can do when you inherit that blank slate. Is there anything that we should do to kind of help you populate it with data? I think that would be a really useful category of feedback that we might get. But Ro, let me turn it back over to you.
thank you. So if I can navigate. So as Jeff said, this is showing with no data. So for each one of these sections, we do have a specific hover, which will show kind of what tenants and what average rating and the trend of that scoring has. So it'll be a better view if I go to Little Pause, where we did add some data. So as a default,
I'm sorry, just again, not to cut you off, but I realize also, some of you, and this is also the really fun part about this pilot, some of you may not have ever seen the comprehensive needs assessment in this, you may not have seen it at all. And some of you may not have seen a version that has domains, tenants, areas of focus, and dimensions, I realize, because this is a brand new instrument. So also, and this is kind of a fun part about this particular UAT experience, it would also be really useful, and we're going to do a more formal version of this as we move into the true pilot of this tool. We're also looking to collect any feedback you have about the instrument itself. And so I think that's a really important distinction between what type of feedback we're looking for. A whole vein of feedback will be, tell us what you think about the CNA instrument, again, comprehensive needs assessment or CNA instrument, and then tell us about this web tool, which is how you interact with the CNA instrument and are actually able to score it and see the results. So really important distinction. And I wanted to, again, Ro, I apologize for cutting you off, but I think that's really critical. And take it away again.
Yep, thank you. So as you can see on our landing on this page, we are defaulted with the tenant selection. We thought this was just a little bit more user-friendly, as when we do get to the assessment, the users do not see the domains, but only see the tenants, areas of focus, and dimensions. But as you can see, it is kind of like a legend hierarchical setup here. So we have our domains with our associated tenants, and we have our associated areas of focus with the tenant all the way down to the dimensions. So hovering on these will give you all the information you need. It's for for this specific dimension. You can see the tenant and area of focus that they're associated with and the average rating. So this table will compile all of the completed and not completed assessments for this specific entity and assessment. That's kind of what I meant by at the beginning when I started sharing that this blue bar drives what's showing on this table. So for example, if we had, let's say, a separate assessment, and let's say Little Paws had another assessment that isn't the comprehensive needs, we can click on that and this table will display all of that respective data from that assessment. And since Jeff also did say we did only have one assessment here, the trends that we have here will show, and it'll tell you exactly like where the rate has gone compared to the previous rate. So the more data that's added into this table, the more accurate it's going to be displaying the trends. And on that, just another little tidbit for the time range, we have set it to be defaulted to July 1st. We picked, I think, this day as a static day, static start day, and the current day. So this is showing anything from July 1st, 2020 to October 4th, 2021. This currently cannot be changed. And this is just as it's displaying everything for that fiscal year. We also have a filtering system, which will show all of the tenants and the completed and drafted assessments. The reason it's the little draft option is not here currently is yet again because we have only completed one assessment here, but in a normal run through, if we do have drafts, there will also be an option here. You can obviously filter to whatever you want to see. If you just want to see completed assessments with this specific tenant, you can press apply filter and it will show all the dimensions from that specific tenant. And of course, you can go in and clear these filters to go back to that regular defaulted view. And it is a lot of data. So excuse for the lag there.
And Ro, I think just to jump in, just because you keep bouncing down to the bottom of the screen, I think it's important. We're gonna after this, we'll actually jump into one level deeper. But I do think it's important. One of the critical ways that we believe that this actually will support school level improvement is through this recommended resources. And what's happening now, you could see we have some number of resources. They came to us courtesy of NDE. And so these are some CNA related resources that are either featured or new. We pick the featured or new tags. But what's true about this is the number of resources can continue to grow because there's at least an option. We didn't turn it on for the purposes of UAT, but this goes back to when it's real life and it's a real community and we really want to think through how those users will collaborate. There's at least a possibility that at least within, I'll posit this, and then this is again another area where we can get feedback, but at least within an ESU, there may be some opportunity for an ESU to be able to observe the trends that are occurring at the different schools and districts under that ESU's umbrella, and maybe offer some resources or provide some resources through the app that are really geared around those trends. And then you could also think at the state level, there would also be an opportunity for someone at the state level to say, well, what are my trends across the entire state? And let's push out resources. And what's cool about the resources, and I'll make a plug for this here, and at some point when the population of resources grows, this will actually really become powerful. The resources can self-filter or become targeted based on the actual results. And so if a school, can you bounce over to dimensions for me, Ro? So if a campus team is scoring a particular dimension, and so for example, I'll pick career exploration, and let's just say they observe that career exploration is a particular area of weakness, again, self-identified area of weakness, and there are resources that are populated that are tied specifically or tagged to career exploration, then that campus team is going to start seeing this recommended resources fill with resources that are tagged for career exploration. And so that's one really clear benefit of making this a really collaborative experience is as resources get populated, there are more resources that can be tagged and then become really targeted based on the self-assessment results that are being entered. So just to make note of that, at the very least now you can see there are some number of resources, you can click them, you can open them, and at least know that they're related to the CNA experience. And then Ro, I think if you want to jump over to insights, let's take everybody there.
Alrighty. So same thing with insights as the assessment overview page. This page is driven based on the blue bar selections. So this table here is what we call the ratings detail page. This is where, based on your entity and assessment selection, you will see the latest updated assessment. So as Jeff mentioned, this is the completed assessment that we loaded ourselves. So this is currently the only one, but this list can be long based on obviously how many assessments we're on, and you can switch between them. But currently we have the year, the fiscal year window here to switch between, and it's defaulted to the current year. But on this table, you can view all the details of specific domains, tenants, areas of focus, and dimensions. So I'll kind of go through that. So on each tab, we have a little summary of each of the scoring for this exclusive assessment. So the only difference between the previous page is on the assessment overview, we're seeing all of the assessments for that district and assessment, whereas here we are seeing the specific details for this specific assessment. And from here, we could see the exact scoring that happened that we did, or I did, and also for the areas of focus and the dimensions. And one thing I didn't mention previously is we do have this degree of performance legend on both of the tables to convey a color coding and also our ratings based on needs intervention, needs help, doing okay, and so on. The main difference we have here on the dimensions page is if you click into one of our dimensions, you will see the definition of that dimension and the supported evidence that is attached to the selection. And we can see the breadcrumbs of the tenants and the areas of focus that are correlating with this dimension. And yeah, that is the rating details table. And do you have anything to add to the for ratings detail, Jeff?
I don't think for ratings detail, I think you're about to take us to a report. And if that's where you're going, I guess you can show assessment history and then show us a report, and then we can score an assessment.
Yep. So assessment history is also driven by this blue bar. Here you'll see all of the assessments that are added for this entity. And entity and assessment. I always like including that to make sure. So currently we only have one, and we do have our filters here that you can drill down and get specific assessments, because we do hope that there will be many. We also have our basic search function, and we can see the average of all the tenants, the status of the assessment and the name of it, and who last modified it and when it was last modified. So one quirk we have here is if you click this little 3-dot menu, you will be able to view the assessment report. So you can view the assessment report for any type of assessment, even if it's a draft. But the difference that we have here, which we don't have a draft, unfortunately, is you can remove a draft from here. You can edit a draft from here, and also view a draft. But for a completed assessment, you can only view the report. So clicking this will open a new tab. And just so you can stay fresh on here, and this will have our report that we have for this specific assessment. So we do have the print and Excel export, which we can show. I don't know if we do want to show this, Jeff. I can if we need to. But we do have a summarized results, which kind of looks like the ratings details table, but it's a little bit more detailed. If we scroll a little bit down, we see the details of exactly what was scored for each tenant, area of focus, and dimension. And this is, of course, printable. And yeah, anything to add with reports, Jeff?
Yeah, and I think this is, again, one of those areas where maybe we gave you more than it is that you need, but we're trying to really think through, and again, imagine what might somebody want to do with this type of information. And we wanted to at least empower users to be able to kind of have a self-contained experience within the web app. And what that means is all the members of a campus team can just go into the web, they can log into the web app and they can see these results themselves. And then there may be some number of stakeholders who don't ever have access to the web app, but who might want to be privy to this type of information. And so we sort of imagine the campus assessment team maybe prints this report or dumps it out into Excel and then brings it to some other team that exists on the campus level, or let's say it's a district level meeting, and maybe the different school level teams all come together with their reports, and then they can talk about their results. And so we just at least wanted to give you some, not that you should always print something, but if you needed to print something and kind of bring it into one of those other environments where you're not going to pull up the web app, this allows you to do so, and hopefully does so in a nice way, in terms of just very nicely encapsulating, again, a scored assessment that could be completed. We've talked a lot about draft versus completed, and that will make more sense to you when we actually show you the scoring of an assessment, because until you've completed it, it's going to be in draft state. But again, this is one of those opportunities where it's two kinds of UAT feedback. One might be, yeah, that was really useful that I was able to run a report. Here's what I would love to see, it as an expansion of the report. And that might be a little different from, like I went to click the report and the half of the report populated and the other half didn't. And we're really looking for both of those kinds of feedback at this point. And then again, a pitch for the pilot. When we move into the pilot, we're hopefully not looking at technical issues any longer. We're really only moving into that first domain, which is the user experience around, I score the CNA, and now I really want to make sure that I get the benefits of school improvement that we believe are associated to a scored CNA experience. So that said, Ro, I just want to pause and look at the room and make sure that there are no hands, no chats, and then I think you could take us through very quickly. I'm not seeing any hands. I'm not seeing any chats. If you want to take us through, just very quickly show us that there's 3 different ways that you could score the CNA, and let's navigate there.
Alrighty. So if you go back to the assessment overview page, you will see this start assessment button. And one little detail that I would like to add is if you expand our basic info, you will see the campus assessment team. So we have, as Jeff said, a manager for each one of the schools. And we also do have the ESU admins who are associated with these schools, but you won't see really the name of the ESU admin, as they are kind of an overseer of all of the entities associated with the Nebraska program that we have. So you can see we do have a manager here and a teacher, or excuse me, a team member. And to have access to the start assessment button, you will have to be added to the assessment team by the manager or by an ESU admin or a program admin. So just to have a quick view of that, you can press this add team member button, and all of the available users who are associated with this specific entity will be populated here. So we can add this user, and they will simply be able to log in, and whoever this user is, Felicio, who we have, if you log in with this user, you'll land on this page, on the campus assessment page, and you will be able to start an assessment. So that was just a brief overview before we go into the assessment, but we'll go into that now. Is there anything you want to add with assessment team, Jeff?
I think just, again, this is another case where just think for purposes of UAT, is it working? And you can see we just grabbed the only available campus assessment team member who was a registered user but not added to a campus assessment team. So Ro, you took one of those opportunities I talked about earlier, and that's okay. But you can add or remove campus team members at will. And what's really critical, and this is another one of those points where we're really interested to see how does this actually get used at the campus level, or again, in that hierarchy where a campus has a lot of different supports available, because we've said many times over multiple assessments, and we're really curious to see, does multiple assessments in actual rollout mean I score the campus needs assessment more than once during a year, and in which case you would have multiple instances or multiple assessments, because maybe you have a fall administration, you have a winter administration, and a spring administration. Then you may see that trend within years. Or there's another, kind of path to go down. I'm going to give you 2, and there are many more paths, but at least another path would be, do different teams score different assessments? And so do you have different groups of folks at the campus level who are providing those ratings, kind of in isolation to that team? And then you can compare the ratings across those teams. That's another path, and there are many more, and we're really curious, what are you guys going to do with it when you get out there and actually put this through practice? But for these purposes, let's just say we gave you the ability to have multiple assessments that are in draft and completed state to kind of give you the universe, and you guys get to fill it with whatever data you find most meaningful, and we want to look and see how do you guys actually use the app.
Thank you. All right, so going to start assessment, right when we click this button, we're going to get a nice modal pop up and we're going to land on the setup tab. So this setup tab is very important, as from here, we can see all of the associated entities for the specific users. So as we are logged in as Nick, who was our ESU admin, he has access to both districts and all of the schools that are associated with these districts. So from here, I can pick any school I want, and that school is where I'll be adding this specific assessment if I complete it. So for the sake of little pause, since, or actually we can actually go to Ainsworth High School, which has no data. We can go in and add that there. So that's the first required field that we do have, is adding the entity. From here, we're going to go to the assessment type, which is an also required field. Currently, we only have one option, so it's hard to pick. Assessment name can be anything you want. But the only thing that we do have a validation in place that will not permit you to have duplicate assessment names. So if we are naming this assessment test 1, if I go in and create another assessment, I cannot name it test 1. And we will get an error message for that to let the user know. Obviously, if there's over 100 assessments, all users are not going to know which names have been taken. So that is one thing I did want to mention. From here, you can also add and select and remove certain teammates from this modal here. I don't know why this guy's popping up here, but yeah, same thing kind of as the campus assessment team modal I showed previously, where you can add and remove certain users. We do have one more required field, which is the year. So this yet again is just to make your assessment very specific and easy to find for any admin or administrator or anything to look for. So we're going to use this 2021 and to 2022 year. So you'll see an optional field for the period window. So this currently is an optional field and you can continue. As you can see, the continue button did populate. You can pick a period year for when this assessment can be started and when it will end. But as I mentioned before, our assessments overview table that we have will be defaulted to the first day of the fiscal year to the current day, the present day that we have. So this is an optional field that you can add or you can add. But one thing I will mention here, and the reason I said the setup tab is kind of important, is you have the option to close this assessment here if you have made a mistake or you have made a decision to not continue with this assessment. And what will happen is this little pop-up. So an assessment is classified as a draft after you have passed the setup tab. But if you have not passed the setup tab and you want to close it, you will be prompted with this for the question of, do you want to just close this assessment where it will not save and it will not be recorded as a draft? Or yes, I would like to go back and save this assessment. So for this demo, of course, we're going to go back and we're going to save it. So right here, it is technically still not saved. I have to press this continue button and get to the options tab before it is saved. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. And now officially, this assessment is a draft in our system. So to show that, I will close the assessment and you can see it is populated in our assessment drafts widget that we have here. So this is a nice little carousel that will show, I think, the 10 most recent assessments that have been created. It does have a little bit of information here with what entity is associated, who created the entity, and who last modified this assessment, and obviously the assessment type too. So from here, you can click into the assessment and you'll be led right to the last tab that it was saved on, which was the options tab. So from here, we have 3 options. So I'm going to go through these first 2 options because they're pretty similar. So we have the complete entire assessment and manually select tenants options here. So if I click complete entire assessment, you'll see that this continue button does activate, and you can click on that. And all of the tenants that are available for this specific assessment will be checked. So, and you can edit, or you cannot edit this, or you can edit this, sorry, stammering on my words. You can edit this from here, but this is just an easy way if you want to score all the tenants on this specific assessment or assessment type. You can come back and you can edit this. And I will go back and show you manually select tenants where all of these will be empty. Oh, okay. I guess we may have a slight bug there, but it should normally look like this, where no options are selected and you can go in and pick whichever tenant is suited for you. And I will go back and show you the last option that we have, which is the take screener and identify tenants. So this is a different path. So if you are unsure of which tenants are right for you or right to score, you can go ahead and take this screener. It is a little bit long, so for the sake of this demo, we're not going to go in and finish the complete screener. I'm not sure why this is doing that there. So we're going to go back in. Give me 1 second. I have some technical difficulties.
And Ro, while you're pulling that up, I think we want to at least just show you what the scoring window looks like. So that's what Ro was going to navigate to.
I guess for the sake of time, I'll go through just the normal run through of the ratings.
Yep, and I don't even think we need to finish scoring one. I think if you just show us what the scoring mechanism looks like.
Gotcha.
Save it in draft status.
So let's go ahead and go into our transitions. I'll pick this tenant. So you have to obviously pick one tenant to continue onto the ratings tab. So I'm going to select transitions. We're going to continue. So from here, you're going to see the instructions of this tenant and how to complete it. So all indicated required ratings and evidence must be completed. And you'll see that you can collapse all of them or expand all of the tenants, or excuse me, areas of focus based on just how you want to view it. There are certain tenants that do have over 10 areas of focus. So this expand and collapse tool is very helpful. So you can see the first area of focus we have here. So this would be our areas of focus. And then this would be our dimensions. So we do have our options here going from NA to 4. And if you are unsure about what options to pick or what these mean, we do have this convenient view dimensions rubric link here, which will show you what your scores signify and like what the description of each one of these scores represents. Excuse me. So to go through, we do have these red asterisks here for what is required. So scoring is required for all of the ratings. And if you have rated anything besides the NA option, you will be required to add a list of supporting evidence. So from here, you can click this drop down and you will see supporting evidence based on this area of focus. So they are all not the same. So if I select one of these and I press save, officially this area of focus has now been completed. And we're just going to go through and score these guys here. Or should I just, for the sake of time, should I go back and do the screener, Jeff?
Nope. I think if you just go ahead, I'll talk as you score this. And
Okay.
I think we just want to get to the next screen here, which just to kind of show you another aspect of this tool that we think is particularly exciting. So here you could see, as Rose said, provided you give a rating, so anything other than the not applicable rating, you will be asked to list your supporting evidence. And you'll see here, as soon as Ro is finished scoring all of the dimensions that are associated to this tenant, we'll be able to get to the next tab, and it will be the supporting documents tab. And what's really cool about this is, we think it's really cool. We hope that you think it's really cool, is the idea that now, if you want to actually start building the repository of my school has done something that we're particularly excited about to move the needle positively in school improvement in a way that's associated to this particular dimension or this particular area of focus or this particular tenant or this particular domain or the entire CNA, I can attach that documentation, and the folks who are part of my collaborative network are able to access that documentation. And I might be able to say something like, hey, I built a really cool school improvement plan that's aligned to the CNA. Here's how it's aligned to the CNA. You would enter all of that in the comments field. You'd be able to upload it as part of your submission. And that's one of the ways that we imagine it really starts fostering that collaboration that we're imagining can happen around this tool. And some of the things that we need to think about, and this is, you're not going to really encounter this in the demo experience, but it's things that if you are imagining how this would be rolled out, we'd be interested in this type of feedback. How would the network, and again, the network is really schools, districts, ESUs, and then NDE, what is the best way for us to be able to start populating the right kinds of resources and pushing them out to the entire community. And I will tell you, at least at this point, the way that we've imagined this is you can attach documentation, but it doesn't immediately go to the community. It does take somebody who has the right permission. And for the purposes of the demo, no one has this permission. But for the purposes of real life, somebody, and the question is what somebody should be vested with the permissions to be able to review documentation, ensure that it's de-identified, doesn't include personally identifiable information, is actually useful to the community, is tagged appropriately, and then can be shared out to that community. So just know that there's kind of this process behind the scenes that we imagine is going to be taking place, and that's one of the benefits of the pilot. But just so at least in this version, you could see this is what it would be like to at least submit some of that documentation. And then that said, I will ask Ro to stop sharing his screen. I do want to just make sure with the last 5 minutes that we have left today, we check on any questions, and I'll front load you if for whatever reason you don't have a question this moment, but you have a question 5 minutes from now. Your best resources are going to be the email userfeedback@hourglassets.com. Feel free to email that, and we'll make sure that anything that we get filters out to the right group of folks. You're always free. I think some of you know each other and have different connections amongst this group, and reach out to resources you're usually used to consulting. And of course, Shirley, I'm going to turn over to you at the last minute that we have after we make sure that we have no questions. And I would say Shirley, of course, is a fantastic resource. And I would say that would be a fantastic person if you have kind of programmatic questions. And then remember, really importantly, technical support is a phone call, a text, or an email away. So if you encounter technical challenges, you're probably going to end up talking to Ro, and he is a fantastic resource. And you saw, of course, he knows everything there is to know about this app. And that said, I'm scanning again for any questions. So I'll look for hands. I will look for unmuted folks. Any questions that you guys have for us?
So just to clarify, you're gonna email us the guide, those of us who put our emails in, and we're gonna go in and mess around with the different users.
Yep.
Okay.
And I did get, that was a great question, Shirley. And I would say here, if you're watching the video version of this, and it's because Shirley has posted it, you obviously can't interact with the chat. And so I would say in that instance, why don't you go ahead and just email us? Again, userfeedback@hourglassets.com if you've gotten to this point of the video. And then we'll send you that UAT guide. And I think, Shirley, you may as well, the same place you post the video, we might as well post the UAT guide.
That's okay. Yeah. And then because we know it's a definite window, what we'll do is we'll just keep it open for that amount of time. And then once this is done, we'll remove it so people don't think that that's what it's expected of them to keep doing. Okay, cool. All right.
And I would say, so Shirley, you said something that I just want to echo. Like this is the part we like to nerd out and dive into software. So my hope is if you responded to Shirley's call and you showed up to this session, you at least have some level of software nerd within you. And that's what we're asking you to harness for this experience, because that's really where you get in and just push things. And Ro, you actually encountered a couple things that surprised you about the software. And so we're going to document those things as soon as we're done with this call. But anything you encounter, that's kind of the fun of beta testing, is nobody besides us have used this software and put it through its paces yet. So do weird things and see what happens. And we're looking forward to the feedback that we get. And again, we'll be really responsive, so we can just start pushing changes out. And if they're really fun ones, maybe we can find a way to kind of publicly credit somebody. That's always if you encounter a really interesting bug, it's always a contest to see who can come up with the most weird one. So have at it, have fun, please. And then Shirley, if you want to close us out.
Yes, thank you so very much, all of you, for sticking this far into the meeting. If you're watching it on video and in person, listening to all this, I'm telling you, a few months ago, I'd have been like, what are y'all talking about? And I do want to say this is in direct response to the first pilot study we did with our first version of the CNA. So we want to be super responsive. So this is the time to really try to take it to the moon and back and see if you make it, and give us all that feedback. So Thank you all. Have a great afternoon and see you all soon.